We're going to call to order our Architectural Board of Review agenda for Tuesday, May 31st of 2022. If we could have our roll call, please.
All right, thank you. I'll go ahead and take roll call. So we have Chair Moore,
Here.
Vice Chair Six,
Here.
Board Member Anderson,
Here.
Board Member Black,
Here.
Board Member Noon,
Here.
Board Member Olson,
Here.
and Board Member Whalen is absent, and we have a quorum. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And with that, we can move on to public comment. If any member of the public would like to address the board, you may do so for up to 2 minutes on any subject within our jurisdiction that is not scheduled on this agenda for public discussion.
Yes, thank you, Chair Moore and board members. So I'll go ahead and start with virtual public comment. So I can see a few members of the public joining by Zoom. So if you would like to speak on general public comment, please raise your hand to indicate that you would like to speak, and I will call on you. All right, so I don't see any hands raised via Zoom for general public comment, so I'll move to in-person public comment. However, seeing nobody in the audience, I'll move to written correspondence. We did receive general written correspondence from Cassandra Ensberg on behalf of Citizens for the Restoration of Community Equity. And with that, I'll turn it over back to you, Chair Moore.
Okay, thank you. We can close public comment and go to approval of the minutes for May 16th. Does anyone have any comments, edits?
Move we accept as presented.
Okay,
Second.
second by Black. Any discussion? No? Okay, let's vote.
All right, Chair Moore,
Yes.
Vice Chair Six,
Abstain on my absence.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Black,
Yes.
Board Member Noon,
Yes.
and Board Member Olson.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
All right, and any announcements by staff, requests by applicants, etc.?
No announcements by staff, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any future agenda items via the board? No? Okay, any subcommittee reports? No? Okay. Well, with that, we can move on from general business, and if we're ready, we can have item number 1. Here they are. Come on in. If you'd like a little orientation, we can provide that as well.
Yeah, so that little cheat sheet there is just some PDF sheet, so it's like your hand tool used to drag around plans to zoom in. Your Z tool, you just click and drag, you kind of get a square box. Okay. And then zoom you in. Control zoom wheel too is another way you zoom in and out. Okay. But yeah, so those are there, and I'm here for help too.
Okay, I usually do like Control Plus to zoom. Oh, that's what
Yeah,
you get right
and then I think you guys also, maybe you have a PowerPoint presentation.
here. Yeah, we do.
So I think that is what,
Great. Let's start with that. Great.
we might need to swap.
They're gonna need to read this into the record, right?
Yeah, we got to start.
So, I think we need everything up
Yeah,
there.
okay.
All right, so this is item number 1, which is 425 Santa Barbara Street. And the project consists of constructing a 4-story, 19-unit residential apartment building comprised of 1 2-bedroom unit, 8 1-bedroom units, and 10 studio units on a vacant lot within the priority housing overlay of the city. The project is designed to comply with the city's AUD program, California State Density Bonus Program, and the Streamlined Housing Program project program. The units range in size from 292 square feet to 1,163 square feet, with an average size of 645 square feet. 2 of the units are proposed to be restricted to very low-income tenants under the State Density Bonus Program. Additionally, 1 of the units is required to be restricted to moderate-income tenants under the city's inclusionary program, with an additional in-lieu fee payment to replace a second moderate-income unit. Per the priority housing general plan designation of the lot, 14 units is the maximum base density with 63 dwelling units per acre, but with AUD and state density bonus, the 19 proposed units are allowable under the state density bonus program. The project proposes the following concessions from the city development standards: to allow a reduction in the minimum private outdoor living space dimensions for each unit, and to allow private open yards from different units to be connected, and to allow the proposed building to exceed 48 feet in height, the 48-foot height limit for AUD projects in the MC zone. The project proposes no on-site parking Each unit will be provided a private, secure, covered storage area that includes bicycle parking. Project design approval is requested. The project requires compliance with the project compatibility findings, and we last saw this December 14th of 2020. Okay, welcome back. If you could introduce yourselves.
Good afternoon. I'm Jarrett Gorin from Vanguard Planning.
My name's Noah Greer. I'm the architect for the project.
So I'm going to start with just a
Before we jump into it, if we could have our minutes from the last round, so we can all refresh our memories. Okay. Take a moment to read through those.
We're also going to go through them one by one in the presentation.
Okay,
All right.
go ahead. And there's that 15-minute clock right there.
Okay, so wanted to start out with just some slides as a quick refresher on the neighborhood. So this is looking to the north across the immediately adjacent neighborhood. You can see our project site there in the background. In the foreground, you can see Anacapa Studios, which is a mixed-use project. Each one of those buildings, which is basically 3 stories with a 4th-story deck and access stair. That's each one of those is one residential unit, and then they have some commercial space on the ground floor. And then just while we're on this slide, just take a quick look at the street frontage on Anacapa Street. We got a lot of pretty small 1-story bungalows going along the street, and then we've got Anacapa Studios, and then back to 1-story buildings. This is the view looking to the east across our site, so that's Haley Street in the front. The mural there is at the Platform Project, and I don't know what the name of this big project is right before that, but that's looking across Haley, so you can see our site there. This is looking to the west across, this is the property across the street from us, Smart and Final and Office Max. You know, I'm showing you these photos because people are characterizing this neighborhood as, you know, exclusively 1- and 2-story or formerly residential or things like that, like it's Mayberry or something, and it's really not. I mean, any reasonable and objective person, if you were to ask them to describe this neighborhood, they would say it's a neighborhood that's full of large commercial structures. So here's our next door neighbor towards Gutierrez Street. This is our other next door neighbor over towards Haley Street. Here's our neighbor across the street, 1-story building that's 3 stories tall. And then this is the neighbor that we have right behind us. That's the Platform. I believe they were concerned about mass, bulk, and scale in this project, and here's our neighbors. So our project backs on their parking lot on 2 sides. So this is the one that's in between us and then heading towards State Street. And those are my slides. We'll go through these minutes. I'm going to address a couple of them, and then Noah's going to address the others. So we'll start with the board's concerned about the lack of parking and impact on limited street parking. Okay, so we understand that, but we're complying with City Council's direction and vision for these projects, and this is their strategy to somehow meet the reasonable housing needs allocation, and this is how they plan on doing it. And the council came up with this idea of not having parking in these projects, not us. So we're going to go along with the policy that the city has set forth as their strategy for somehow meeting their regional housing need, which maybe not everybody agrees with, but that's their policy, and we're going to go along with it. Number 2, the board's very concerned with neighborhood compatibility of the project, understanding its transition. There needs to be more work on the massing, provide a transition with the surrounding neighborhood. the surrounding neighborhood is, you just saw it, what it looks like. It's large commercial structures. Most of them are two-story, and they're not your regular residential two-stories. They're commercial two-stories. So even the building behind us is probably upwards of 30 feet tall, even though it's two stories. And we understand what you said, but we disagree about whether this is incompatible with that neighborhood. And I think when you see a couple of the exhibits that we have that are things that you asked us to prepare, I think they'll demonstrate that. So I'm going to turn it over to Noah to go over the next couple of points.
All right, thank you. As we look at the plans, you'll notice that not a lot has changed, and I hope that you'll give us the opportunity to defend that and to make the case for the project and why we think it's appropriate as designed. Okay, the board's comment number 3 was to provide documentation, block-long elevations, or 3-dimensional images so the board can understand the impact of the proposed massing. So to the set, we've added this exhibit, which is both a footprint study of the 2 blocks immediately around the project and then street elevations. So looking at the footprint study first, despite the scale of our site, we really did work hard to vary the massing. And that's something I'll be coming back to repeatedly. And yes, it's a courtyard structure, and I would say it's a great asset to the project that we were able to accommodate a sizable central courtyard that's a ground floor courtyard that then extends up through the mass of the building, helping again to vary the massing of the structure. So now if we can look at the street elevations, please. Starting at the top, across Santa Barbara Street, we have what's fair to characterize as a massive commercial structure and a massive parking lot. And then looking at our elevation along Santa Barbara Street, you can see starting with our building that we really have stepped the massing. The building is at places between a foot and a half or so from the property line. But in general, as you move up, we've worked hard to step the massing in. And that central courtyard I was just talking about really does divide the mass, and you can see it cutting the building right in half. We're adjacent to a number of sort of garages and shops, let's say, including the tire shop at Haley Street. Our project has 19 units, so it's a residential project in a neighborhood that is not residential, and that also has driven a lot of the design decisions we made. And if we can go back to that street elevation very quickly. We're accommodating 19 residential units. And behind us, to the left there, you can see a structure arguably similar in mass and scale. That's a single residential unit. Our goal here really was to...
Pardon the interruption. Can we zoom in on the portions that you were talking about?
I can zoom in further, but then we're going to miss the edges of them.
Okay.
How's this?
Just try to illustrate with what you're talking
If I
about
can
too.
get any bigger here.
And it really was our goal to, while creating a dense residential project, create what we feel will be the most attractive building on the block by any objective standard. Okay, I'd like to move on to the board's comment number 4. Some board members find that the internal courtyard scheme makes the mass of the building extreme and suggests that other overall site uses and layouts be studied, such as collapsing the interior courtyard and accessing the units through much smaller or enclosed corridors. So if we could look at the site plan briefly, you'll see in general we've not changed the design of the structure or the central courtyard. We do respectfully disagree with that comment from your board. We feel courtyards have been used in many successful Santa Barbara projects, especially housing projects, despite the resulting impacts on the massing. Again, and if we can go to the elevation sheet, please, we'll look at all 4 elevations for a moment. We really have worked hard to integrate massing into every single one of our elevations. And despite being dense, I will argue that our building does have a substantial amount of movement to it. All right, we'll stay on the elevations for your board's comment number 5. The project needs to relate more to the streetscape as far as action, space, windows, et cetera. So starting with the street elevation at the bottom right, the east elevation facing Santa Barbara Street, I just want to talk a bit about the adjacencies we have on this project. This elevation looks directly onto busy Santa Barbara Street. Across that is a massive parking lot and a Smart and Final. And if we can scroll to the left to look at the north elevation, this elevation faces a tire shop. Looking at the west elevation, this elevation faces a parking lot. And finally, with the south elevation, this elevation also faces a parking lot. Okay, so again, this is a purely residential project. There's no ground floor commercial. It's not a residential neighborhood. Some would characterize, myself included, the neighborhood as rough at times, and the project has been designed to mitigate that, to accommodate ground floor, dense, small unit residential with a arguably not residential friendly neighborhood. We did take steps to address the street in ways we felt were appropriate. And again, we're addressing the neighborhood in the state it's currently in. So there are moments of where we brought the scale of the building down to the human scale, and those include at the right of this elevation, wooden human scale gate. In fact, there are two human scale gates, the one visible on the right and then one around the corner on the left past the trash enclosure, which I think has an 8-foot plate height. And then we have a number of transparent openings into the building. Granted, they might not look so transparent here, but the 4 arched openings, including the primary central pedestrian entry, are all simply transparent ironwork. And then moving up to the second floor, that archway, again, is also completely transparent through into the central courtyard. And then as you move up, that's where the central courtyard cuts the building completely in half, providing total transparency as you're looking from the street. And I would say, lastly on that point, well, let me move on. Board's comment number 6 briefly provides solutions to alleviate the height concessions, such as adjusting floor heights. With restudy of the interior courtyard, more outdoor living spaces can be accommodated. So on that front, I'd say we do have 10-foot plates for these units, but I believe that those plates are important for the livability of these units. These are very small units. They're accessed from the interior of the courtyard via covered walkways. Those covered walkways are much loftier and friendlier at a 10-foot plate than they would be at lower plates. And we've also carved into the building, all around the building, with private outdoor living spaces. And I would argue that those 10-foot plates really help those private outdoor living spaces to get some more of a view of the sky and to be more usable for the residents. And then again, of course, the height concession we are requesting as a mandatory concession as part of the project.
So on number 7, this was in our project description that you read into the record. This project is proposed pursuant to SB 330, the Housing Crisis Act of 2019. It's got a lot of provisions in it. One of the provisions is that subjective design guidelines can't be the basis for denial of an affordable housing project or project that's got housing in it for low, very low, or moderate income families. So if the city was to adopt objective, quantifiable design standards the same way it has for SB 35, those can be used both for applicants planning projects and for your board evaluating them. But these urban design guidelines and infill design guidelines, which are very subjective, different people think they mean different things, those aren't a basis for a project denial in the case of a SB 330 project. So again, you know, that we're not making this stuff up. That came down from the state, and the city has to comply with that. And this is both an SB 330 and a density bonus project. So that's our response to that one. I think, again, you know, everybody knows what the street looks like out there, and it's just hard to understand people's resistance to a fairly attractive Spanish structure on a street like that. And I don't think the standard we want to be compatible with is a tire shop. There have been some comments that came in, and I don't think I really need to address anything specifically that came in. Those comments are all leveled at our project, but they're really general comments about the city's policies. Again, you know, things like the parking, the lack of parking, the density of units, the height of the building, or, the fact that, oh, my goodness, there might be more of these AUD projects. Well, that's the point. That's city council's strategy for the downtown, and we're implementing that strategy. So I understand not everybody agrees with it. It's possible maybe even some of your board doesn't agree with it. Maybe this is something that just has to shake out at city council, but we're going to follow that strategy and that policy, and we believe this project does that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. If that concludes your presentation, we need to open public comment for this particular item.
Yes, thank you, Chair Moore and board members. So I'll go ahead and start with virtual public comment. I do see a few members of the public joining by Zoom. So if you would like to speak on item 1, please raise your hand to indicate that you would like to speak, and I will call on you. All right, so I do see Richard Lloyd has raised their hand. Richard Lloyd, I'm gonna go ahead and send you an unmute request, and you will have 2 minutes to speak.
Yes, good afternoon, board members. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Very good. Yes, I'm here on behalf of the 126 East Haley, the platform. We submitted a written comment. You've had an opportunity to review it, so I'll keep my comments brief. You heard a lot about how the applicant has apparently worked hard on this project, but clearly that hard work didn't account for actually any changes or any of your comments from before. The hard work just seems to be formulating new arguments. Nothing has changed from the comments of the ABR in 2020. Nothing has changed on the exterior. The parking issues remain, and I appreciate applicants' perspective on that. But equally, what we have seen is AUD projects being proposed that are respectful to the neighborhood, that take into account these concerns about the scale, the massing, and the parking. We see that just around the corner on Haley Street. I pointed out another project in the comment up on State Street. And there is a point here where simply, the city council may well have a policy of addressing these residential issues, but that isn't a license to take absolute full advantage to the most extent you can and pack as many people on these projects. That's clearly not compatible with the neighborhood. That's your role as the ABR to look at those issues. And I just think you have the opportunity here to show that the ABR has to be respected, that instead of just ignoring previous comments and coming back with a couple of extra sketch plans, maybe they should take into account your comments and actually make significant changes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. So at this time, I don't see any more hands raised for this item. So I'll move to in-person public comment, but I haven't received any speaker slips and I don't see anyone attending the meeting. So I'll move to written correspondence. We did receive written correspondence for this meeting from Pete Feldman, A. Barry Capello on behalf of Platform SB LLC, and Robin Donaldson. So with that, I'll turn it over back to you, Chair Moore.
Okay, thank you. We can close public comment. And I think to start us off, we have a member of the planning department here that I think it would be great to address some of the concerns about state density bonus and some of those questions.
Sure, absolutely, Chair Moore. My name is Allison DeBusk, and I'm a planner with the city. This project is proposed under state density bonus law. We have confirmed that the density complies. We have also do have zoning rules that state that no parking is required in the central business district, and this property is located within the central business district. As a density bonus project with the very low income affordable units, they are entitled to the 2 concessions. As you read, they're requesting a concession related to open space and one related to the building height. And just to be clear, there is an ability to exceed the 48 feet even without a concession. The city does have a process for that for community benefit housing, which this would qualify for. So And also just to respond to one of the comments in a public comment letter, the storage unit space has been accounted for within the average unit size of each unit, so that is included.
Okay, thank you. And to just come back to the parking issue, to please confirm that parking is not within ABR's purview, if you could.
Yes, that is correct. The project is before the ABR as the decision maker related to the design only, and this project does comply with zoning regulations for parking, and so that is not within the ABR's purview.
Okay, thank you. Does any other board members have questions for Ms. DeBusk before we jump in?
Could you clarify quickly? You said you can exceed 48 feet without concessions. Did you mean 45, or was it the 48?
I believe this area of town is eligible for 48 feet. That is a change that the city council made approximately 2 years ago for AUD projects.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else before we move on?
Chair Moore?
Yes.
Do I understand that these units, none of them have to be economic low income, correct?
Through the chair, they are proposing 2 very low income units and 1 moderate income unit, and that is what is getting them the additional density.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's go to questions for the applicant. Mr. Olson, would you like to start?
Yes. Would you clarify for me the actual changes you've made to the elevations since you were here before?
Yes, Board Member Olson, there have been essentially no changes to the elevations.
Okay.
And most of the changes to the plan sets have been the addition of details to all of the hardline drawings and notations and information on the title sheet. That's true. And I might just say, we're happy to discuss stylistic improvements and minor changes where possible. Given the large scale, the comments before primarily seem to be addressing the core concept of the project. I guess I just want to reiterate that we're happy to talk about, stylistic improvements that can be made.
The fact that you haven't made any changes isn't encouraging that kind of discussion, it seems to me. But I have a second question is there a landscape plan?
Yes, there is. Thank you for asking on the final sheet of the set.
Could we look at that? That's it. This is unchanged also.
That is correct.
Perhaps if you just speak on it a little bit for us to describe. I think I'm mostly interested in the Santa Barbara Street landscaping.
Sure, thank you. You'll notice that we are accommodating the widening of the pedestrian way there, consistent with the pedestrian master plan. And there are a number of steps, let's say, in the facade of the building where we have a number of plantings where we benefit from some very large existing trees in the public parkway that also provide a substantial amount of shading to the front elevation. And to some degree, those limited the plant choices, as I understand it, or plants were chosen appropriately based on that fact. And so in front of our trash enclosure at the plan bottom, you'll see we have a planter, and then that planter generally extends up, widening where possible, where the building steps back. Most notably at the front entry, which is centrally located off the courtyard there, that's where we have the most landscaping.
And have you determined that the building won't interfere with the growth of those trees or somehow cause their demise?
Yes, thank you for asking. We did consult an arborist in both where the massing of the building lay in relation to the trees and how much, if any, pruning would be needed. And it was confirmed at the time that the trees should be healthy and survive.
Thank you. One last question. Is there a building within this area that you have described earlier in this area that you've described that's taller than this building? or as tall as this building?
Mr. Chair, Board Member Olson, the building that's right behind us, Caddy Corner, the Anacapa Studios, which I think Robin Donaldson designed and lives in, is about the same height as this building. You can see that on our street elevations. And then I don't know how wide of an area you want to go, but like another block up Haley Street is where you start getting into like where the new police station is going to be and where Anacoda is and the Lions building. So these taller buildings are dotted around Santa Barbara, and again, with these AUD projects, we're at the leading edge of these things. So every time you see one of these projects, it's going to be taller than things that are around it. If the standard was match what's around it, then we'd never have an AUD program. So we believe that even though it's taller, it's compatible, and you know that there are buildings that are this tall in the area.
I
I
believe
can
you
go
just
back to that exhibit.
I mean, I think the photo exhibit was
Oh, you want to see that?
more telling. than-
Sure. So here, these ones, that shows those buildings. I guess I can't really move my mouse around, but that shows the buildings in the foreground. That's Anacapa Studios, those three tall buildings there. And then if we go, that's the view of that same project from Santa Barbara Street. And the tallest point on that building is very similar in height to our building. So we have a little bit more mass up higher because we have 19 units, and that's one unit. But there are buildings in the area that are similar.
So that, I've been by that building. It seems to me like there is something else going on in that building besides one unit. Is it there? Aren't there?
The ground floor on those buildings are commercial space with some pretty high plates in it, and then they have their residential garages on the ground floor as well, I think. So that pushes up the mass of that building.
That's all my questions for now.
Okay, Mr. New?
Thank you, Chair Moore. Quickly, could we go back to the elevations? Or the rendered elevations, I guess. And talk me through each elevation, the immediate adjacent property, structures. I don't see an outline of an adjacent structure, but just talk me through each one again. I think you mentioned there's parking lot adjacent to a couple of them, but just tell me.
Do you want me to go through this?
Sure.
Okay, so this elevation, obviously, this is what's facing
Right.
Santa Barbara Street.
Right.
So the closest structure is Smart and Final across the street from us. This elevation here, this faces the Coast Tires that's on the corner. And
Single story?
single story, although it's 2 stories in height, it has a big sloping roof, and they've got basically a blank stucco wall, which faces our property at pretty much of a 0 lot line.
Okay.
And then here, both of these elevations here face different parts of the parking lot for the platform.
Mr. Gordon, while we're on these, I think it might be helpful to identify the portion of the building that exceeds 48 feet, because I believe that is a relatively small portion of the building.
Yeah, okay, so, and we can go through it on each one, but it's basically this parapet up here, and everything else is down below that. And then, again, here, the building is split into half because of the courtyard plan that we're using. So these 2 sections up here, and then down here we have, this would be one of the sides of the U shape of the courtyard, so it's a solid mass across, but this little projection up here and this parapet exceed that height. And then over here again, that's the same projection and parapets.
Okay. So that's a perfect segue to your concessions. Your height is one you're asking for. I'm not concerned about that one. The one that gives me, I guess, a little more heartburn would be the open yard. Can you speak about you know, just talk me through where you should be, and then what you're proposing and the justification behind that, if you can.
You speak to the square footage, and I'll speak to the concessions.
Sure, this will test my memory for the individual square footages, but can we please look at the ground and second floor plan? And in fact, I'm sorry, Jarrett, can we start on the title sheet? Let's do a zoom in where we explained the open yard areas provided for each.
Oh boy, you guys' title sheets. Where is it on here? We have so many
Right.
statistics. Building square footages, site statistics?
No, we just describe it as varies. Thank you for bearing with me. Back to the ground floor and first floor plan. Okay, and I'm afraid we will have to zoom in, but I believe we were able to accommodate approximately 200 square foot open yard spaces for each of the ground floor units. And I'll simply have to defer to staff for the typical required open yard space. I'm sorry, I don't remember off the top of my head.
If I could jump in here, I'm not sure that our concession was on the square footage of the open yard space. It had to do with another requirement that the city has about how isolated each individual space has to be from each other's, and that was the concession we asked for, was to get a break on that so that we could use sort of shared access to some of the open space.
And that is correct, and also primarily the minimum dimensions. There are moments where the minimum dimensions squeeze below.
So the
Allison's has helped us find these statistics on our own cover sheet. So when we go up there,
Right in the middle,
Where it says POY.
just bottom.
In the section called unit square footages.
okay, let's try it this way. There? Oh, POI, private open yard.
Right, thank you. So, obviously, this does not describe the standard requirements, but it does list, in fact, a private open yard we're providing for each unit. And if you'd like, I'm happy to show you on each floor. We can flip through the floor plans if that's helpful.
I think it would be, because it also shows how we're using those to step the outsides of the building back.
Sure.
So you're gonna have to help me out on what sheet that is.
Sure, when you get there, I'll let you know.
I don't know what this is doing here.
Hit Control 0.
Okay.
Click into the main plan set, just like hit Control 0.
Control 0. Okay.
And you can either scroll through using that thumbnail, or you can use those up and down arrows.
Okay. So there's our ground floor, and then this is the second and third, or are these all 4 floors here?
We can start with page 6 of the PDF.
All right.
So zooming in on
zoom in
on the
this
right is the ground floor plan that we were just looking at. You can see the private open yards have a diagonal hatch, as does the central interior courtyard. And then I think we can jump to the left on the second floor plan. And let's say, just using as an example, units, I believe it's 10 and 11 at the top of the second floor plan. Facing the street, plan right, we see the 102 square foot open yard for unit 11. And that's a common condition where we have essentially eroded the mass of the building with archways, and then we have the private open yards tucked in there. Now, at the back of the project, let's say unit 7, 8, 9, that's where we have some, some 3-foot conditions, some of the smaller conditions for those open yards. So they do open up at the corners typically. Okay, and then jumping to the third and fourth floor plans. Starting at the third, it's not too dissimilar from the second. And then the fourth floor plan, where we've reduced the massing of the building substantially, just gives us opportunities for much more extensive open yard areas.
So these are the only floor area we have on the 4th floor, these 2 small units?
Correct.
We have other 2 units, 3 units? 2.
2 units.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Okay.
Mr. Black, any questions?
I noticed there were some comments from, maybe from the past meeting and in the notes that asked about whether there would be an opportunity to open that courtyard to the street. Can we just go to the elevation? The rendered elevation? Yeah, the street frontage, that one. That primary entrance in the center there, how high is that wall there from grade to the top there? Just out of curiosity.
Board Member Black, I would estimate 13.6 in that area,
Okay.
14 feet.
So, was there ever any thought given to just maybe eliminating that whole mass and just having wrought iron fencing and gate there, and then creating more landscape in the courtyard that can be viewed from the street? I mean, I noticed just at just from a landscape perspective, the courtyard is pretty spare, but it's just, I think I saw a palm in every corner and a fountain in the middle, and that was pretty much it. So I saw maybe an opportunity in my mind that if that whole wall was eliminated, still having a gate there and what have you, but being able to create more landscape in that space necessarily that would be viewed from the street.
I think
Because
that's-
frankly, you have very little to speak of for the whole project, so.
Yeah, we don't have a lot to work with. I think we would consider something like that.
Because if you use more palms in the courtyard, for instance, maybe you get a little more volume that would sort of bring down the scale of the building that some people might be concerned about, and create more of a green space for your residents to look down on, per se.
Mhm.
And maybe a little bit more opportunity for greenery on the street frontage. It doesn't appear that you have that opportunity anywhere else on the other three sides, so you're pushing up against those parking lots, yes? So, can you respond to that question, I guess? about the
Mr.
front?
Chair, Board Member Black, we hadn't considered that, but we would consider that. That's the type of, I think, direction that Noah was alluding to, and that's the kind of thing, yeah, we would absolutely consider that. And I think that would turn the archway thing up there in our plan, that may turn that into some sort of almost a bridge, or like you would see in La Arcata, and that could be pretty cool. So yes.
And,
Okay.
and I would echo Mr. Gorn's statements. Board Member Black, we would certainly be willing to consider that, and I can imagine scenarios in which that could also accommodate the requirement for safety and security we have for the residents.
Okay. Those are my only questions.
Okay. Vice Chair Six?
Chair Moore, and there's been reference a lot to comparing heights and so forth to the Anacapa Studios. I just want to confirm one thing. Can we go to that overall
Street elevation?
block-wide footprint study?
Smaller. Oops, keep making the thumbnail smaller. That's most of it.
Yeah, the footprint I'm interested in.
Oh, the footprint.
Yes. So can you circle with your arrow, circle the arrow with actual studios? Isn't that those two right there?
It's
Or
these-
there's three?
It's these three right
There's
here.
Three, okay. And the long rectangle up sheet from the street side one is a different, no, we're down here at the studio. Yeah.
Yeah, so the 3/4-story buildings that you're seeing behind us, that's this building right here. And then these are the other two buildings in Anacapa Studios.
And then the frontmost studio, there's another rectangle above that. That's a different one-story beast, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, all these buildings here are one-story, basically bungalows.
And then my only other question is, you say you have 10-foot plate heights. Is that including, what's your plate height on your ground floor? Is that also 10?
Board Member Six, also 10.
Okay, thank you. That's my questions.
Ms. Sanderson?
Yeah, can we go to the site plan? And then can you, have you accommodated for a transformer location?
And I can tell you now, admittedly, we do not have a location identified for a transformer.
Okay, and then can you walk us through what utilities are in the front here? I see trash, but is there anything else?
At plan bottom right, trash, recycling in green in its own enclosure. And then as we move up the plan, some dashed circles are stormwater dry wells that are underground. And then above that, we do have backflow preventers against the behind landscape, just sort of centrally just above the entry. Oh, and then I should say as well, we plan for banks of electrical, gas, et cetera, within the behind the front facade of the building, let's say.
Okay, and then what kind of mechanical system are you looking at using for this project?
At this time, we're showing, and we can see them on the floor plans, small heat pumps individually located on each open air yard area for each unit.
Okay. And then can you walk us through how someone accesses their storage with a bicycle?
Sure, if we can look at the ground floor plan, please. So to get there, one would come through the primary entry gate, skate around the fountain in the middle of the courtyard. And then the entrances to the storage areas are door 111 and 124 to either side of that staircase. We have 5-foot wide hallways that you would walk your bike in around the corner. And in fact, there you can see some additional space we set aside for utilities, et cetera. And then within each of those storage areas, there we're calling out 2x6 spaces for the bicycle itself.
Okay. And then have you started any preliminary structural design?
At this point, we've not started any design. We have had some preliminary discussions with the structural engineer to make sure we're not way off base on any of our assumptions.
And how much have you assumed for each floor assembly?
I don't have the answer to that question at this time.
Well, in your building section, you have 10-foot floor-to-ceiling heights. I'm just curious how much you're showing for your floor assembly. in your
Oh, I'm sorry, I
sections.
misunderstood. Got it. We're showing a 14-inch TJIs at this point, or 14-inch assembly anyway.
Okay. And then can we go to the Santa Barbara Street elevation?
Ms. Anderson, would you talk into your mic, please?
For sure. I watched I watched the whole thing from 2 years ago or a year and a half ago. And did you study adding any windows to this street elevation in the units?
Board Member Anderson, we did. There are more substantial changes needed to really get functional windows at the street elevation. So we felt it was appropriate to really talk about well, I'll leave it at that.
I'll add to that though. We are intentionally, we don't want to put a lot of windows on that elevation. It's a urban area. I don't think people living in those units don't want to have large ground level windows that are a couple of feet from the sidewalk that people can walk up and look into. And I don't think that's an ideal way to design a ground floor residential unit in a neighborhood that's currently the way that this one is. I just got back from the National Planning Conference in San Diego and experienced a lot of buildings where they tried to do that, and it doesn't come out well. Basically, people abandon those rooms in their house because it's not a comfortable place to be.
Okay, can we go to the ground floor and second floor plan?
We can blow these up as needed.
That's good. Okay, those are my questions.
Okay. I have a couple questions. So while we're on this plan, so for instance, I guess it's a second floor plan. So the balconies that are at the street front corners there, they have essentially on the next level up, there's an additional balcony condition like that? That's sort of reflected in the next floor up?
Mr. Chair, yes.
Okay. Is there a way to, and this probably goes for all of these balcony conditions where they're kind of stacked, is there a way to differentiate those such that they would help reduce the expanse of plaster frontage, i.e. like setting them back slightly or using a different material, something that would help minimize that width?
Excuse me, would you move your...
Sure.
Thank you.
Yes, Chair Moore, we'd be happy to look at that. And if I understand you correctly, you're referring to, say, in the space of the individual balconies where we have, let's say, there are two archways, a different treatment such to give it a little less
Mass.
I understand, yes.
Yeah, or maybe like open railing on the highest level balconies or something like that.
It's just a question about if there's any reason that those are treated the same as the rest of the building and materials, et cetera. Is there a practical concern that we're not aware of?
No, Chair Moore, honestly, one of the initial approaches was to keep it simple and squarely Spanish, and that's where we landed on that front. But we're happy to consider changes there.
Okay. And then on the same east elevation, so how much parapet is above the 48-foot limit? Is it a smidge or is it a couple of feet? And what is the height of the parapet at that level?
If we flip to the hard line elevations, I believe I have it identified. Should be page 12. So, Chair Moore, I believe those parapets are 30-inch parapets. I'm sorry, we're looking at the sections. Wrong sheet, we do have elevations.
Looks like you went past them.
Yeah.
Sheet
Right here?
9.
Yep, thank you, and if we...
See what this looks like in thumbnail view. All right, there we go.
Okay, so let's look at this.
Particular one you want me to?
Yeah, the street elevation, bottom right. And we have a max height elevation on the far right. Obviously, that includes the projection, which takes us to 52.9,
Okay. What's in
which
that
I think is about
projection?
36 inches.
Okay. What's in that projection?
There is nothing functional in that projection. It's just ornamental.
Okay. So you have, the fourth floor plate plus, say, 18 inches of structure and whatever else. So you've got a pretty substantial parapet up there for a fairly small amount of roof. Is
And
there a reason you need that much?
Sorry to interrupt, Chair Moore. I believe we have a 30-inch parapet with the intention being that that will shield any solar.
Okay. Then on the site plan, so you've set the building off the site or the property lines on the, I guess, the sides and the back, 18 inches or so. Is there a plan for that little area? Anything to do there?
Chair Moore, it's something we're still discussing with landscape architects. Of course, we cannot anticipate having access to that area since it's purely access from other properties. While we'd love to have some vines or plantings there, it's seemingly not feasible. So at this point, there would just be a ground treatment likely.
it's not feasible for what reason?
Maintenance.
Okay.
I would point out, we can go look at the photo because I don't know what's actually there, but our neighboring property does have a landscape strip all the way along that same boundary in their parking lot. We can't necessarily rely on their landscaping, but it is landscaped there.
And then, as a follow-up to Ms. Anderson's question about the transformer, where would you try and cite this? So we can take that into account moving forward.
Thank you, Chair Moore. There's no two ways about it. It is tight, and we are proposing a dense site, and I would not want to carve away at the central courtyard in any way. I think in all likelihood, we might revisit a plan top. We might revisit the location of that gate, although I do have a private open yard area there. I'm afraid I would have to study it. It certainly is tight. I would endeavor to keep it behind the front facade of the building, or at least behind some landscape element or hardscape element, a wall or some structure, if at all possible.
Okay. Any follow-up questions before we go to comments? Yes, Mr. Black.
Just a quick one. On the site plan, so the parking areas south and west there, you indicated that those strips that I see there, they are landscape? Do you have photographs of that by chance?
I do actually.
Just curious of what's
Yeah,
there.
I'm not sure what's there either. So I do have a photograph right of that area. Oh, it didn't get all the way across.
So I guess my question too would be, was there any thought to go into discussions with the adjacent property owner and augment the landscape
Well,
at your expense, just
The-
to make your project look better?
the adjacent property owner hired Barry Capello to try to shoot down our project, so I'm
Got
not
it.
optimistic.
I saw the letter, yeah. Well, it'd be to everyone's benefit, I would guess, but,
I agree.
so there's never been any discussion. I guess that's my question, so.
I think we might actually be able to see a little bit of what's there in this photo. Oh, I guess we can't see a whole lot there. Whoops, wrong one. You can kind of see what's going on. I mean, they've got like a 4 foot or 5 foot wide landscape strip with some trees in it and mulch and some things.
Oh, there are trees there?
I think
There
they've got
are
a couple
trees?
of small trees in there,
Well, I
yeah.
know there's some finger planters there, but.
Yeah, the whole thing, if we go back to, which our site plan shows their site plan. Let me get that up here.
I have to imagine your construction's gonna impact that strip, because you're right on it. So, anyway, it was a thought. It looked like an opportunity to sort of augment both properties visually. So,
Yeah,
but
they've
that-
got it all here, and they've got this going, it gets even wider when it gets where people would be looking across their parking lot towards us. And I do have a photo of that one.
Chair Moore, and to the
Yeah.
applicant team as well, I have a Google slide pulled up of that, if you guys would be at all interested in seeing.
Sure, just
Yeah,
really,
let's see
really quickly, we need to
Yeah.
get moving.
I get it.
It's hard to see what's going on back there. You can see the trees, though.
Those are in finger planters.
Yeah, those are the finger planters. Well,
Okay,
that's all.
thank you.
Thanks.
All right, let's go to comments. Who would like to start? Sanderson? To mix it up?
Okay. Well, part of our responsibility is to find that this project is compliant with the project compatibility findings, which does include subjective design guidelines. So I'm kind of a little confused, but I'm gonna go ahead and give you my opinion. I am not ready to give this project design approval. I think that they need to come back and study how this actually complies with some of the design guidelines by interacting with the street. And what was said from Mr. Black is what was said at the last meeting, and that is to open the courtyard up to the street. And it sounds like you guys will study that. I think the location of the transformer needs to be thought through and landscaped, or at least shielded from pedestrian view, and still provide the proper access. I agree with what Chair Morris said in studying breaking up that massing on the street with studying how the open yard balconies interact and how you can break up that mass. I don't have a problem with the height. I just think it needs to interact better with the streetscape, and I think there are ways to do that. Thanks.
Okay. Vice Chair Six?
Chair Moore, I think that, several of the previous questions from board members might be suggesting more micro adjustments, but I feel that our first comments about the macro design and organization of this building are still appropriate. And I think that there's some wiggle room and some subjective responsibility that we and the applicant have in order to fit within the neighborhood compatibility. And I just, I can't sit here and, say, well, we've developed this to the maximum allowed by ordinance, and because we're forced by the state to make housing that we can't have any more wiggle room or better coordinated buildings coordinated with the area. I think that so I still am looking at the macro organization of this building. And as far as style, I think that obviously we don't want to repeat and do surface garage architecture, but I think full-on refined Spanish, the way we see it here, is not the way to go. I think that I think you get some sense of compatibility with the more stripped down contemporary of the Anacapa Studios. I think that kind of architecture would go a long way to fit into and coordinate with the surroundings. So as far as I'm concerned, there needs to be a lot more study on a macro scale that needs to happen.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Black?
Well, we've had the discussion about opening the courtyard, and I think I'm hearing some somewhat positive response from you. Architecturally, I don't have an issue with what you're presented, what you're showing. So, the size, bulk, and scale, and the architectural style, I think I could see compatibility with the neighborhood. I mean, you're probably be the best building there, but I'm guessing so. But that said, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, so really no other comments. Thanks.
Could we actually flip to the elevation sheet? Sorry to, just so we, Mr. Noon?
Thank you. I am going to concur with Board Member Black's comments. I find the architecture very appealing from all directions. I think it does a good job at addressing the size, mass, bulk, and scale of the building. to fit. I will also add, I would like to see, or I think it's important to study that, opening that courtyard. I think that's the only place that seems just a little bit harsh from the street front experience. So I'm supportive in the direction with that comment.
Okay, Mr. Olson?
Yes. While I find some of the elements of this building satisfying architecturally, I see NOAA's efforts to break up the massing, and I think that has some possibilities. The area that I have trouble with, and I'm going to have trouble with because I will vote against this, is in the compatibility findings. I think that what is being expected of us here, and Mr. Gorn has mentioned that this really is what the City Council wants and what the state wants, and perhaps that's true. And I think that that might be in our future. However, what's happening here on this project is that we have to project into the future and to say, look, this is what's going to happen in that block, and this is what's going to happen in the next block, and the next block. But I'm uncomfortable at this point with it because they aren't there. And we don't really know they're going to be there. We suspect they will. I suspect they will. So I think when it comes to the compatibility findings, I think if again, if Mr. Gorn has said this, that this is going to have to maybe shake out at the City Council level, but if the council is expecting the architectural board to approve these as in the compatibility with the neighborhood, I think that somebody has to tell us how that we might differentiate what the neighborhood is expecting, because certainly the neighbors aren't expecting this, and so that we might be able to at least, perhaps we're going to have to change the compatibility findings. And but at this point, it's going to be hard for me to say that does meet the compatibility findings. That's all I have.
Okay. Mr. Olson, while I understand your concerns, what the City Council and Planning Commission ask us to do is to take projects like this and look into the future and decide whether, for instance, a street full of these would be appropriate, with the understanding that the densities that are allowable and what City Council is saying they want are being achieved. So I understand it's not an easy thing to do, but that's how we have to look at these projects.
The word "have to," I maybe disagree with. I think that maybe I'm not willing to become part of that "have to" at this point.
Okay. Well, my own comments are that I heard Vice Chair Six say a few things that I agree with. So I think because of this street and the location, you have an opportunity to do a vast variety of design approaches. You know, you could come at this from a lot of different angles. And I don't think that, and I said it the last time around, that this very detailed Mediterranean approach is necessarily appropriate for this location. I think there's a lot of advantages that you could have by approaching this in a little bit more stripped down Mediterranean fashion. One of them is cost, height, all of those things. So I would encourage you to take another look at just that initial approach and decide if that's really appropriate for this project and this location. And I think it's possible to have less impact with some other design approaches. Whether that's not a courtyard approach, whether it's, something else. I think it's a mistake to not try and address the street and to open up onto the street and have windows facing out on the street. I understand that currently the condition isn't particularly a friendly residential street, but this is the first project that's going to lead the way to something like that in the future. So while it might not happen on the ground floor, I think the floors above absolutely should be open and addressing Santa Barbara Street. It's to everybody's benefit. So those are my broad comments. I agree, further study is required to get to a project design approval and to say that the project meets the compatibility findings. Would somebody like to craft a motion? It sounded like, Mr. Nun, you were happy with the direction of the architecture, and I've heard varying other comments from board members, so.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
would it be appropriate to do, so I hear several that several members sound out that the architecture style is appropriate. Would it behoove us to make a show of hands in regards to whether this particular style is going to sway the board or not?
Sure, we could do that. We can do, so a straw vote. How many board members feel the exterior design of the project, meaning the style, is appropriate at this time? So that was 2 board members. Okay.
Okay, then with that, I will attempt to make a motion that that the board at this time cannot find neighborhood compatibility and would suggest the following. Number 1, to change or revise the styling of the exterior of the building to be more sympathetic with the surroundings, or let's say not so purely Spanish detailed as shown. And yeah, let's just leave that with that. There should be, in at number 3, there should be an attempt to take that style and find ways, take that new style choice and find ways to minimize the massing of the, in particular, the opaqueness of the perimeter walls, the opaqueness of the balconies. And to number 4, to find ways to open the courtyard to the street with a much more transparent architecture. the applicant shall study, the next iteration shall include the electrical transformer and have it well integrated into the architecture. And every effort to increase the perimeter greenery landscaping on all four sides, or as possible on the exterior perimeters of the property.
Mr. Six, did you intend to mention anything about plate heights?
I don't think that's a big issue. I would entertain, if others concur, that we should see 9-foot instead of 10-foot plate heights to reduce it down below the 48. But I don't think that's the big issue here. No, I don't think that's going to, taking 6 to 12 inches out is beneficial.
So yes is the, no is the answer to the?
No is the answer, yes. Yes, no is the answer. I entertain any other thoughts, any other additions to that motion?
Well, before we do that, let's find a second for this motion.
Second.
Okay. Second by Ms. Anderson. Discussion?
I have a quick question. I apologize if I missed it. Was there a comment about opening the courtyard?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Chair Moore?
I could support this if you would add something about plate heights, as if the 9-foot height seems to be somewhat a compromise between what's there and
Are there any other board members that feel that way?
I would say in the motion, we've asked them to study changing the architecture, which would then potentially reduce the mass. Maybe that takes some of the parapet, maybe it takes some of the projections down. So I would not be, I guess, supportive of, holding them to a plate height and just let it see what happens next time.
Member Olson, I would not mention anything about my plate heights, about plate heights.
Staff just wants to make some.
That would be in indefinite continuance.
We could do an indefinite continuance, but I think to a date certain, because this is an AUD project, so a 4-week continuance would be most appropriate.
Okay. Could we read what we have back?
Yes. So the motion was to continue the project 4 weeks with the following comments. Number 1, the board at this time cannot find neighborhood compatibility and would suggest the following. 2, change or revise the styling of the exterior of the building to be not so purely Spanish detailed as shown. Number 3, there should be an attempt to take that new style choice and find ways to minimize the massing, in particular the opaqueness of the perimeter wall and the opaqueness of the balconies. Number 4, the applicant shall find ways to open the courtyard to the street with a much more transparent architecture. Number 5, the next iteration shall show the electrical transformer and have it be well integrated into the architecture. And lastly, number 6, make every effort to increase perimeter landscaping on all 4 sides as feasible.
Is that accurate, Mr. Six?
I think that covers it.
Okay. Any other discussion?
I will vote against this, but in general, I'm in support of it. But I think that it might be important to the applicant to know that my vote could be swayed the next time around by lowering the plate heights.
Fair enough. Okay. Well, then if
Thank you for
that's-
your transparency.
If that's all the discussion, let's take our vote, please.
All right, thank you. So I'll start with Chair Moore,
Yes.
Vice Chair Six,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Block,
Yes, I'll support this.
Board Member Noon,
Yes.
and Board Member Olson.
No.
Okay, the motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, we're on to item number 2. Come on down. Do you need a little, those are for you.
These are for me? Yeah, so it's a little cheat sheet, and I'm gonna try to help as much as I possibly can. It's basically just like your so we're just gonna practice I like using control and you can't do it this way. Control, scroll, and then if you wanted to, so when sometimes in here in Zoom tool too, you get stuck or to pan around the page.
Share this more with you.
I'll be over there if you have any questions or concerns. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Item number 2, this is 208 Cottage Grove Avenue. And this is a proposal for a 3-story, six multi-unit residential building using the AUD program. The project entails construction of 6 new 2-bedroom units ranging in size between 835 and 948 square feet, with an average unit size of 894 square feet. The proposed density on the 4,821 square foot lot is 54 dwelling units per acre on a parcel with a general land use designation of commercial/high-density residential in the priority housing overlay, which allows between 37 and 63 dwelling units per acre. The proposal includes 6 covered parking spaces and demolition of the existing residential unit and accessory structures. Project design approval is requested, and this requires compliance with the project compatibility findings. We last saw this January 24th of this year. Welcome back.
Thank you.
If we could have our minutes up, there we go. We can just take a moment to read through those ourselves. Okay. If you could introduce yourself.
Yes, Kirk Houdin.
Great. And if you could limit your presentation to 15 minutes, that would be appreciated.
All right, thank you very much. So basically, what we're hoping for is PDA today. We've made a number of changes to the exterior. We've made a number of changes to the exterior in addressing the board's comments. And I'll just try and walk you through that, assuming that you're all somewhat familiar with the project, since it's been seen twice now by the board. On the site plan, one of the changes that occurred, and pardon me if I'm a little bit slow in helping you to see this, that's not working, so I'm going to try. In the back here, there's a additional projection outside with the former perimeter of the building was for utility space. Okay, we'll do this. And I don't think actually there's any other changes to the exterior of the building other than the fact that we now also have a landscape plan.
which I'll show you in a moment. And I'm going to go to the next sheet, which is the floor plan. Nope.
If you go back up one and then hit Control 0, that'll take you.
Control 0. In addition to the 3 floor plans, we now also have a roof plan, and there's sections through the building in case anyone's interested. But I'm going to take you to the elevations and see if I can walk you through the exterior changes, which I know is what you're most interested in. So we, in an attempt to comply with the board's request, we took out all the arches except one. There's one arch on the building now, which is at the garage entrance at the front. We also took out all the corbels, the corbel detailing, particularly, as you might remember, we had it occurring at the garage level, and at wherever we had a post and beam connection, we had little corbels. Those were all taken out. This elevation also was altered in that this projection and this one are now identical. Formerly, they were of different sizes and slightly different window openings, and now they're the same. Again, just slight detailing changes in terms of eliminating corbels. We previously also had a kind of a stepped roof projection here. Now it's straight across. Not really much else changed on that elevation. And you'll see when we get to the sections, we are showing a dropped ceiling at the entrance to the garage so that utilities there will not be visible. And then it's really similar notes. Here's the additional projection that I was speaking about occurring at the back. And again, elimination of the simplifying of the detailing. And we also altered the color. It was a little bit brighter yellow. And this, what we're aiming for is a color that's similar to, not identical to, but similar to the work-study building that's our live workspaces. That's about a block away. Also 3-story construction. And there's actually a variety of colors in buildings along the street, so I don't think we're going to be incompatible in having something that's not just a vanilla off-white. And again, this is the little projection, added projection at the back. And then I'll skip to the landscape plan, and we'll see sections. Let me go back one because it does show that drop ceiling at the garage entry, which was requested. Some details, which I can walk you through the detailing, but I know it's stuff you're all familiar with. It's really very standard, both plaster detailing and board and bat for the wood-sided areas. And then the landscape plan, our landscape architect is here, but we were looking for a design that was compatible with the elevations. We were showing 2 large palms in the front planting area here, and we do have, as I've mentioned on the previous presentation, sizable street trees already on both sides of the project, as well as along the perimeter of the project. Here, a large avocado along what we call the west side. There aren't any trees along this side, so we are proposing 3 Brisbane box trees that coordinate with the elevations. And I won't go back to the elevations, but they coordinate with the plaster elements on that side of the building. And then there's also a plan for the second floor raised planter area that's over the entryway. And the photos regarding the plant materials that are proposed, as well as the pavers that, permeable pavers that will be in the front yard area there. And that's pretty much it, so. yeah.
Okay, thank you. With that, we will open up public comment.
Yes, thank you, Chair Moore and board members. So I'll go ahead and start with virtual public comment. So I can see a few members of the public have joined via Zoom. If you would like to speak on item 2, please raise your hand to indicate that you would like to speak, and I will call on you. All right, so I don't see any hands raised for this item, so I'll move to in-person public comment. If you wish to speak on this item, please fill out a speaker slip by the back and bring it to me. But I haven't received any speaker slips for this item, so I'll move to written public comment. We haven't received any written correspondence for this item, so with that, I'll turn it over back to you, Chair Moore.
Okay, then we can close public comment and go to questions from the board. Mr. Olson?
Yes, while we're here on the landscaping plan, on that area where you have 3 trees planted, what is happening on the next door neighbor there as far as the viability of those trees? How close is that construction? Because I'm wondering how the trees are going to grow in there, like you've drawn them.
Right. Well, there's, currently there's fencing along this property line, and there's a two-story apartment building in the back here, and a 1-story residential building towards the front, and a storage area right here you can see boxed in.
Great.
And so this is their yard area. And there are some trees there already. I'm not sure exactly location or type. But you know, we were very cognizant of the fact that we have a relatively narrow area in which to plant, and wanting to provide some relief to the massing of the building in relation to the neighbors and to their backyard area.
You've
So
answered my question. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Right now, I don't have any other questions.
Okay. Mr. Noon?
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Mr. Black?
I was wondering, in the same vein, do we know what you can tell me what the dimension is of that side yard? Where
4 foot.
Okay. That's my only question.
Okay. Mr. Six?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't understand that illustration to the left there, what that's showing us. You know, that.
Uh-huh.
What is that?
There's a sizable raised planter area at the second floor.
Okay.
That's, so this is street side, right? And this is the entrance to the building here. This is the garage entrance on this side.
Got it.
And at the second floor, the front unit is right here. This is the front door, and this is the access from the stairways and elevator to the front door. But between that balcony and the street, this is about a 7 or 8 foot deep by 16 or 18 foot long raised planter that's been part of the project from the beginning. And it's going to have a variety of plants, just roughly conceptually presented now, that some which will cascade over the front, which is a plaster parapet wall, and I can go back to the elevations if you want me to show you what that looks like, and the rest. And it's also an area in which we're using for water filtration. It's part of the civil design as well.
And how deep is that planter?
4 feet, the way it's currently designed.
Okay.
Or 3.5 from soil to, base, something like that.
So when you come back with the final plans, you'll be more specific in terms of the plant material you've chosen for that area, I
Yes,
assume?
yes.
Okay. Thank you. That's all.
Okay. Vice Chair Six?
Yes, thank you. So I still haven't got the answer to whether the Biscayne is the appropriate tree. to s-
Brisbane. yeah.
Brisbane is
It's a big-
appropriate
It's
tree.
a big tree.
And is it appropriate for that narrow space? And is there a better selection or?
Well, we could let the design professional
Yes.
Yep.
answer that question.
Yes. I didn't mean to.
If you zoom out, you'll see a picture of it in the street as an example of how it would be, at its largest, in my opinion.
That's a young one,
Yeah.
kind of.
So that's the idea, is for it to, go straight up. It's more vertical columnar tree.
No, yeah.
And then can you
Okay.
also just state your name for the record as well? Thank
Katie
you.
Klein, landscape architect.
All right, and I know there's some trees in the very rear of the property that are on, not yours, but the other. Do we, what kind are those, and do we need to have a arborist care or a report on their survival of those?
That's a good question. It's hard to access that area at the moment. It's on private property back there. They're large and existing, and construction measures will be taken to protect them on the plans.
Do you know what kind they are offhand?
No, it's hard to see and access that area.
Okay, and as long as we're going for PDA, just one other, the trash gate material, you have it along the throat, is that a wood or?
I imagine it'll
Opaque.
be metal, but we haven't gotten that far.
Okay,
Could we go there on the site plan or the first floor plan?
Control 0.
I can tell you're an analog man.
Yeah.
So they're not actually facing the street, right? They're
Yes.
along the driveway inside.
But they'll be opaque and so forth. and
Yeah,
so on.
they'll be opaque, but probably metal.
All right. And then as long as we're almost here, your double check valve, your,
Right, we're showing, this is one of the great features of our design, is that the fire backflow is actually located inside the building.
whoopee.
Yeah. And then we're also, we have utilities, space for electrical utilities here, and whatever other exposed backflow devices or plumbing might be needed or can also be hidden in that space.
So you don't have to manage a big electrical transformer?
Not that I know of at the moment, and I've, raised the question with our electrical engineer. We don't have a response yet. So it partly just depends on the design of the units themselves and the electrical requirements and units, and we haven't gotten that far, so yeah.
And then your landscape professional on the backflow preventer, have you determined a place for that yet?
Well, that, like I said, it could be right here.
Ah.
This is open space under this stair. This is
Oh,
all
okay, it's
utility
open,
space here.
okay,
Yeah.
all right. I got it, all right, thank you very much.
Ms. Anderson?
Have you started to think about lighting at all? Exterior lighting?
Yeah, we have not.
Okay. And then mechanical systems for the units?
Yeah, they'll be independent per unit, heat pumps, small heat pumps, but, and because we have 9-foot ceilings, we can do a foot drop and hide those, conceal those within the unit. So far, that's kind of our,
Okay. And the condensing units would be on the roof?
well, it won't be air conditioned.
Oh, you're
so-
just doing heat, okay.
Yeah, yeah. At least currently, there's no plan to air condition these units, yeah.
Those are my questions.
Okay. I think all my questions were covered in that. So let's go to comments.
So I have one more question.
Okay.
There was reference to doing something to the ceiling of the garage area, and I didn't hear your response to that. It was the last item on the conditions.
Well, I mentioned it twice as I
I'm
was
sorry, I
going.
didn't hear it.
Well, yeah, we're showing a dropped ceiling in that initial front 15 feet or so as you come into the garage, because we have plenty of height there to drop the ceiling, so whatever pipes or utilities are occur in that area can be hidden.
Great. I understood it the last time to include the whole ceiling of the garage, which actually I thought was unnecessary, so I appreciate your answer.
Thanks.
Okay. I think, I don't know if you have it with you, but is there a materials board?
No.
At
we're
this
not-
time?
We don't have that.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go to comments. Mr. Olson, would you like to start?
My comment is only appreciation of the architect's attention to the requirements and requests, and the conditions that we've asked him to make. It feels to me like he has paid close attention to what we asked him. That's all.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Noon?
I would reiterate that and be in support of granting PDA.
Mr. Black?
I would agree.
Vice Chair Six.
Well done. Just, can we go to the elevations just a minute? Yeah, this is so minor, Mr. Gadeen, but the trim on your wood, like on the base at the bottom of your, it just looks a little heavy, and they're
Talking about the projections there, or?
the baseboard
Mhm.
at the very bottom,
Mhm.
maybe there's a more sophisticated or thinner line there, but you might it's just only a suggestion, but other than that, great job.
Ms. Anderson?
Yeah, I agree. It's ready for PDA and look forward to the material board and lighting locations.
Okay, so I will make the motion that for project design approval, and the project shall return for final approval with materials board, lighting plan, full landscape plan, all required details per the checklist.
Second.
And I have to read the compatibility findings. Okay, so number one, the project is consistent with the design guidelines, particularly in that location within the city. Number two, it is compatible with the architectural character of that neighborhood, as there are many different design styles in that area. Number three, it's appropriate size, mass, bulk, height, and scale. Just because of the location and the design. Number four, we are not aware of any adjacent landmarks or historic resources. Number five, it does not impact public views of the oceans and mountains. And number six, the design provides quality open space for the units and quality landscaping that benefits the public and its neighbors.
Approval of the second.
Okay. Any other discussion? No? Let's vote, please.
All right, thank you. Chair Moore,
Yes.
Vice Chair Six,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Black,
Yes.
Board Member Noon,
Yes.
and Board Member Olson.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Thanks
Okay,
very much.
thank you.
Nice job.
All right. So we are a little bit behind still. Do we need a quick stretch? Let's take a 3-minute break, please. Okay, so moving on to item number 3. This is 15 South Hope Avenue, and this is a proposal to convert the small commercial cafe area to an amenity space for the residents, convert the commercial parking to residential parking, convert some of the units from 1-bedroom to 2-bedroom units, and 1-bedroom units to studios, and converting an open deck area to a 1-bedroom unit. The overall number of rental units would increase from the originally approved 46 units, 44 units per the final approval and approved building permit, up to 47 units, but within the maximum allowable density of 49 units as allowed under the AUD program. A total of 47 parking spaces would be provided, 1 per unit. The overall building floor area would be 38,880 net square feet. No final appealable decision will be made at this hearing. This project requires compliance with the project compatibility findings, the urban design guidelines, and the Upper State Street area design guidelines. Okay. So, welcome. Is there anything from staff at this point before we jump in?
Chair Moore, just to explain that this project was approved by the ABR. We did issue a building permit for it, and so these are revisions. So the project's in a slightly weird place, where it's not built yet, but it has also been approved and has a building permit. So just make sure that your comments are taking that into consideration.
How long ago was that?
The building permit was issued in November. The approval, I don't have the dates in front of me. It was a couple years ago that ABR approved it.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, welcome. If you could introduce yourself. And we have a 15-minute timer there for your presentation. Thank you.
My name is Ben Anderson with RNA Architecture and Design, and I'm excited to be back in front of you today to review these changes. A good deal of time has passed, and most of the changes we are requesting are that reflect some of the evolutions of the final versions of the plan it's not reflected in these plans, but we had originally proposed 2 townhouses in the kind of flag lot heading north towards State Street, and we were not able to provide a solution that SE would sign off on for that area, and ultimately lost those 2 units, which we were really excited about. So the portion of the site that effectively now is just an access easement to a pad-mounted transformer for us, that was a net loss of 2 units. And when we went in for building permit, that's sort of what the unit count had reflected, the total of 44 units. And with the time that we've had since, and the owner looking through this and trying to find a way to build this and value engineer it, we've looked at a few options. So one is to convert some of the 1-bedrooms into 2-bedrooms. They were quite large for 1-bedrooms, which at the time the owner was willing to proceed with. So we've changed that back to what we think are workable 2-bedroom units. And then we've also eliminated what was a very small commercial cafe at the frontage along Hope Street, which is now going to be seen as a resident amenity. Finally, we've proposed to remove what was once a rooftop terrace facing the creek setback in the rear of the property. And by adding a unit there, we felt like we could get a little bit more density, get back up to closer what the site will carry from a unit count, what's permissible, and do it in a way that doesn't impact how this project is viewed from the street. And then the last piece is, as we've gone through some of the value engineering elements of this, we've looked at places that are not visible from street, that might have a sort of a slight downgrade in terms of material quality from some really ambitious and exciting materials that we have along the front of the property in the main courtyard. So I'll just sort of walk through this. It was requested that we just present sort of side by side of what was permitted and approved, and then kind of where we stand today. And if you need me to zoom in, please just let me know. So this is our ground floor. This was the area that was initially proposed to be a commercial use, which did require commercial parking. So there was a mix of residential and commercial parking at the ground floor. And we've proposed to eliminate that, so everything from within this gate is effectively residential parking. We don't have some of the security concerns that we may have had previously. And this is just seen as a resident amenity space. We've provided a single restroom in there for the time being, but that's one significant change that we're proposing. What you're seeing at the ground floor, for some of you who may not be as familiar with the project, is 2 residential units along Hope Street, an access courtyard from Hope, and obviously the vehicular in and out, which was determined with traffic to match up with the curb cut from across the street. We have a ramp down to subterranean parking where the majority of our parking is provided, some interior storage, and then units along the rear facing into the creek setback. So we think these are really interesting units that look out onto some nice green space, and then we have some additional residential amenity here. On the second floor is a good representation of places where we've taken 1 bedrooms and converted them to 2 bedrooms. So for these 2 units, which were a little on the large end, based on a market study, we've looked at ways of converting them back into 2 bedrooms, effectively by adding frontage along, or keeping the frontage along Hope Street, excuse me, but adding frontage into side yards in this case, or into the sort of entrance court as shown here. Additionally, actually one thing I didn't mention, sort of the high level, was we've redesigned the building instead from being several separate buildings from a seismic standpoint into effectively one larger one. That's eliminated what was a very narrow courtyard along the rear of these 2 units. And we've returned some of that additional square footage back to those units to help make them a little bit more generous when they've converted to the 2-bedroom. There's also a very minor amount of additional unit depth that creeps into the south-facing courtyard here. We don't see that as a major issue in terms of redesigning the courtyard and the landscaping there to accommodate that, but did want to note that. Same configuration is proposed on level 3, with the 2 units facing Hope Street, the 2 units facing our south courtyard, and then we've converted what was once a 1-bedroom unit below into more of the studios, and these continue to stack up the units so we don't have kind of plumbing transfers happening where we previously had. At the level 4, this is showing where we had a roof terrace facing the rear of the property with the creek setback. We're proposing to put a 1-bedroom unit in that area. Again, it's not visible from Hope Street. You maintain the courtyard aesthetic that we initially sought, and we're maintaining the large amenity terrace facing Hope that we initially had proposed. The unit here at the southwest corner is converted to a 2-bedroom. It really is kind of the one of the better units because it has the wraparound balconies, which we had worked very closely with ABR previously to sort of modulate the massing and step back where we could. This reflects how we're trying to tie the buildings together for a little bit more efficiency from a structural standpoint. Also simplifying the waterproofing. As you can see here, there was some open spaces that traveled the entire length or depth of the building with bridges that connected to the units. So we've proposed to cover that. We are providing a skylight in there for the upper floors with a small light well to try to bring back a little bit of the daylighting that we had. And the remainder of the circulation paths are effectively open breezeways. So they're covered, but they are open to light and air. From a material standpoint, apologies that some of the tone is different, but not a lot of changes proposed on the Hope Street frontage.
Can you make them?
Sure, yeah. Sure. So this is where we were previously. We were proposing a terracotta tile nail-in rain screen along major portions of the public-facing facades. So that's what you're seeing here. This was our attempt to sort of architecturally collage a traditional palette of Santa Barbara materials. Where we can, we wanted to encourage at the ground floor vines to grow up onto and kind of become a part of that material palette. So you're seeing that reflected, and this was the proposed commercial space, which was really being designed as a warm shell for a future tenant to come into. The proposed change, attempts to maintain that continuity and design intent as much as possible. Really the only change is some subtle additions in terms of exiting from the building that has drawn down the total amount of glass along the street frontage. So this would be the glass for the tenant amenity space. And we are still proposing to have trained vines up onto and kind of covering this lower mass so it effectively kind of becomes part of the collaging of materials, as I mentioned before. So really not a lot of change in terms of materiality. There were some slight material color changes from a white within the inset balcony to a dark stucco, and that was intended to kind of help pop or further recede those spaces. The south frontage, which is also visible because you have the FedEx property directly to the south with its surface parking lot. So this was another facade that we wanted to maintain as much as possible. This is what was approved with a mix of white stucco plaster, the nail-in terracotta tile, and again, the kind of trained vine. And what we've proposed changing it to is really as a function of now that we've kind of received a building permit, some of our exiting off of this courtyard requires fire separation for that point, so this pops up a little bit, and we're proposing that this is just a simple concrete finish. We don't have a lot of space in the exit or in the access pathway to the south of the building to provide that, and it does sit on top of a basement garage. So that is a material change, even though it's kind of within the landscaping scope. All other materials here, as you can see, are effectively the same. Our south-facing courtyard front facade is also the terracotta facade, and we've maintained that material change in terms of the inset of the balconies. This is the creek side, or our east facade. Not a facade that's visible from street, but we had originally proposed some of the nail-in terracotta tile. I believe was a Dunkin' Donuts, maybe it still is a Dunkin' Donuts, directly north and east of the condominium project that's north of us along State Street. So this corner does have a little bit of prominence. There's a significant amount of tree canopy coverage here as well. But we did like a little bit of that same materiality for the rear facade, so we've shown it. This is that previously provided for in terms of outdoor terrace that we had. The current proposal is to, again, take that away, add a unit there, but maintain some of the material concepts that we had previously. And then for our north facade, which directly abuts, although it does have a setback, the condominium project to the north, as you can see here, we wanted to treat that in a very simple way, be cognizant of privacy. We had numerous conversations with the homeowners association and residents about how to best do that, and had initially proposed a significant amount of the terracotta tile here on this north facade. This is pretty much at the property line, and it's at a portion of the condominium project that does not have a lot of openings or windows. It's also not set back very far, so you don't really see it from street. So we're proposing to remove that terracotta tile along here, which again directly faces the neighbors, and remove some of the terracotta tile here in a portion basically at the extreme rear end of the property with a lot of that tree canopy coverage. And then if we just do kind of a before and after, again, apologies that some of the material tonality may read differently. I'm happy to answer any questions that relate to that, but before and after, no real material changes other than just a programmatic change for the ground floor use. This is kind of from the southeast, looking across that FedEx lot. So, fully understanding that these facades are visible from street, we wanted to maintain that material continuity. So that's being reflected here, other than the fire separation that we needed for the exit from the courtyard. Our rear facade, the creek setback, when we had previously met with ABR, we kind of agreed to provide a pretty significant fence. So it's really not a space that was intended for people to go into and enjoy, but kind of a joy from the outside looking at it. So you're seeing a significant amount of anticipated, effectively native and wild growth here. What we're calling kind of our entrance court. Initially these were units this was just the sort of side of the unit, in some cases like the interior of the bathroom. So we've added a window here. This in the unit plan is actually part of the living area. So this looks out onto street, gets a little bit more daylight, and simplifies the material palette because this area is now covered. And so the idea that would be trained vines all the way up it has shifted more to a simple plaster in the background, but you can see that we're still keeping the nail-in terracotta rain screen facade along those areas. ground floor of that. So these are kind of two views just from different elevations. Same idea here, wanting to preserve the amount of terracotta where we can and where it's visible. And then another view from street here with the same considerations. There are some slight changes in window sizes, as you can see here. That's a function of whether that's gone from a additional window in a living area to actually being a bedroom window. We wanted to increase that proportionally. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. With that, we need to open public comment.
Yes, thank you, Chair Moore and board members. So I'll start with virtual public comment and then we'll move to in-person. So if any member of the public joining by Zoom would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand to indicate that you would like to speak and I will call on you. All right, so I don't see any hands raised for this item, so I'll move to in-person public comment. So I do have 2 requests to speak. So I'll start with Mr. Jason Dax and then move to Rodrigo Gonzalez. So if you'd like to come up to the podium and you can speak.
Good afternoon, members of the Board of Architecture. My name is Jason Day, not Dax, and I live in 3791 State Street, just directly north of that proposed development. And I just want to say I'm very impressed with the questions you guys ask. And just a brief history on this project. Back in 2016, there was one design proposed that had tile roofs that totally fit the Santa Barbara architecture style. And then they went to this design here that you see, where it's more like a TJ Maxx style, Charlie Munger School of Architecture stuff. And a problem I have is they're building directly on our property line, directly above us. And when he says there's nothing facing it, our patios are facing it. So when he says he's had conversations with the association, he hasn't. They haven't approached us. So what we're asking is that you say no to this, just because this is a third bite of the apple. How many bites do they get? And they want to take away the tile facade, so we just, we get white reflected back at us. That doesn't seem right to me. And so I would just say no. It's like, this is enough, and they're going from cutting the space down to pods. Why can't they move the 5 feet off our property line? They're building right on our property line. There is no setback. That's unreasonable. I mean, it's like 4 stories high. So no, I just urge no, say no to this. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm hard of hearing, so. But the main thing is that I know that this has been reviewed prior, maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I made comments here, probably different people, different board members. And at that time, we were discussing the proximity of their north side, like I was talking about, to our south side, where our patios are. Ours are 3 stories, garage on the ground floor. Second floor was the main room with a patio facing south. And theirs north is 4 stories. So our 3rd floor is equal to their 3rd floor, but then they have a 4th floor above that. And it's a flat roof. So they have outside patios or outside area for living space. And they can be looking right into our patios, which is only on the 2nd floor. And they're all in the same row, facing that way. At that time, way back when, we were asking that if they move their building to begin maybe 15 to 12 feet, 12 to 15 feet away from our property line, so we'd have some separation. And now it's right on the property line. So that's like 5 feet away, where their windows are going to be looking right at our patios, plus the folks up at the top, instead of having a gable roof. The compatibility is obvious. when you look at a building in Santa Barbara, I grew up here. I can look at any building in Santa Barbara, and if it's built by local architects and designed, it looks like Santa Barbara. You know you're in Santa Barbara. So a building like this one is just square. It looks like a commercial building, and it's way too close to ours, and it's not compatible with our architecture at all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
No, that's it for in-person speakers, and we haven't received any written correspondence for this item. So with that, I'll turn it over back to you, Chair Moore.
Okay, let's close public comment. Before we jump into questions, a bit about our scope of review. Where do we stop and start with this?
Thank you, Chair Moore. So, as I mentioned, the other project has been approved. So, regardless of what happens tonight, that project can move forward. They have a building permit, so that project isn't on the table. What's on the table are the changes that they're proposing. So some include additional massing, but then there's some additional ones related to material changes, which would be more similar to a review after final type of review.
Okay, thank you, that's helpful. Okay, questions. Who would like to start? Okay, Mr. Olson, go ahead.
You spoke of the fence separating the project from the creek. And what is that fence made of?
It's a mesh fence, metal mesh.
Okay, and the terracotta tiles, you are planning on the vines growing on the terracotta tiles? Is that correct?
No.
Oh, I misunderstood then. What do the vines grow on that are on the building?
They grow on just simple plaster, or in some cases, it's the concrete wall that is enclosing our parking ramp.
Great, thank you. And can you outline on the plans the areas that both of these people who've participated in our event to this point, the areas that they were talking about, so that I have an idea where the third floor becomes the fourth floor and how it overlooks their patios? Can you show us those areas on the plan?
I'm happy to talk to that. That it's not reflected in this particular iteration in terms of the building to the north, but I can kind of narrate through that if you'd like.
You don't have a site plan?
I have it here. I have a bunch of backup material, but I was told I couldn't share anything else other than this.
So do the best you can.
Sure, okay. So the outdoor amenity space for the units that would be of concern to what was just mentioned here and had been part of the conversation in the past does start at our level 2. So if we kind of try to shift to the elevation here and zoom in. The condominium units, if I were to try to draw a line here with where their balcony starts, based on window height here, and this is a kind of a high bay parking structure. So if this is conceivably where someone stands, they actually, are standing a little higher than the second level, which is the start of our residential terraces facing north. There is one floor here that would just have balconies. We purposely did not make them step-out balconies. They're just simply Juliet balconies. They're intended to open up and provide a little bit of exchange of air and daylighting. But because of the kind of grade changes, and I believe this garage floor-to-floor was set for commercial reasons in terms of what's further north to the to State Street, but you get kind of a half condition, so you don't have that consideration, which was part of the calculus several years ago of one person at their balcony looking directly across eye line to another. The other comment, or just trying to address, this is our property line, so the front portion of the units, again, this is that kind of terracotta facade that's right on it that we were proposing to change. But when you get a little bit further back into the plan where our studio units are set back from the property line, that setback is in excess of 10 feet. So that's where we get the separation, a little bit of step-out terrace, but also landscaping to provide some of the privacy to the neighbors to the north.
Can I interrupt? Can we go to a plan?
Sure.
That shows that?
So this is the second level.
I think that answers my question. I don't have other questions.
Okay. Mr. Noon?
I don't have any questions.
Mr. Black?
Couple questions. So I might understand that the setback of the building has not changed from your approved
not,
plans?
no.
Okay. Relative to the neighbors to the
Correct.
north? Okay. And then were there any changes to the landscape plan? I haven't seen a landscape plan, but
So we have not updated the landscape plans. We wanted to meet with planning and sort of propose these changes, understand really what it took from an approval standpoint. We don't anticipate any change in the existing landscape plans. Our main terrace, which fronts Hope, this is a simplified version just for conversations about units and what we're proposing. This is not intended to change, so this would remain as proposed as part of the existing building permit. The courtyard at level 2 also is not proposed to change from what was permitted and approved. We are, again, just showing a simplified version to sort of focus on the architecture, not the landscaping. The portion of the landscaping that does change is at the uppermost level. Let me just zoom out so you can see them side by side. This had also been a partially landscaped terrace. Again, it's planters on deck, so it wasn't as lush as it might otherwise be, and so we've proposed to add a unit there, again in a place where it's not visible from street because of the position of these units. So removal of the landscape terrace here, which is a mix of hardscape and landscape, and then at the level 2 courtyard. These two units do pull forward about 16 inches, which was a request from the client to squeeze out just a little bit more square footage, but also provide a slightly more usable bedroom depth in those areas.
so I see you're here basically just for concept comments, yes? And then they'll be back with more definitive landscape plans in this case?
Yes.
Okay. Those are my only questions, thanks.
Okay. Vice Chair Six?
Yes. Can we go to sheet 2? So all of the down sheet and right sheet, all of that is deck for exiting and so forth. There's no opportunity for other landscape in that ground floor
please.
area.
Thank you.
There's no opportunity for more landscape in those ground floor air perimeter on-grade site,
Are you talking about on the south frontage here?
south and Creekside, yes.
So this is effectively just a paver system to access those units and the amenity space. Beyond this line here is the creek setback. So this is, and again, happy to bring landscaping plans that reflect.
So that's lush
Yeah,
along there.
from that point.
How about this down sheet one? Is there?
Downsize, this is on top of the parking structure. So, we could look at planters that sit on slab, that's sloped to drain, of course. This was our pinch point, which is essentially at the minimum for fire access. And we had initially shown that as landscape, just to be clear. Also, we have a landscape plan that does reflect some plantings in the front of these two units for privacy and separation that is not in these. Happy to share those with the next review.
Okay,
And just, you know, as Mr. Busk pointed out, that, you know, our scope of review is really what the proposed changes are.
oh, yeah.
So let's try
Okay.
and
Well,
focus.
so there is a proposed change on the north side elevation. You're showing gray on that elevation. Is that a plaster? Let's see, that would be sheet 10. Proposed. Is that off-white plaster?
I think I'm on the wrong page.
No, that was good.
So the facade facing the neighbors is proposed to be a single white plaster. We still do have the set, oops. Don't want to touch. We still have the insets that does provide a little bit of variegation.
It would be the same color plaster as
Yes,
the
yeah,
rest,
that's
okay.
correct.
And then on the south side, you're taking the growies off of the lower floor, the proposed. Can you slide it over to the proposed? So you're taking the growies off of that and doing exposed CMU?
Yes, so
And the rationale for...
these are the areas that are, we don't have the width to put planters. We need the
Understand.
access clearance.
The
But where we
the
do,
material of that wall, can that be plaster rather than CMU?
it could be.
Okay. And then, I don't know where to show this. Oh, let's go to some of your renderings. One more, maybe, couple down. Yeah, here's a good one. So, are you proposing a black flashing at the parapets? Is that what I see? And that's new, correct?
That's correct.
Uh-huh. Okay, thank you. That's my questions.
Okay, Ms. Anderson?
Sure, can we go to level 2? It's sheet 3. So those two middle units where you're adding square footage, did you consider pushing those, I guess is that south, or plan south, all together instead of enlarging it on both sides?
The part of the reason that we just recaptured that square footage is in structurally tying these buildings together, each of those floors is no longer visible, open to sky. So you'd end up with an extraordinary wide hallway if we did that we didn't think was worth the effort. And also we wanted to preserve as much of the original landscape space and design as we could. So it was sort of a very minor adjustment to the south, and then really it's just recapturing the area lost with the tying of the buildings together.
Okay. And is there, I know landscape is going to come back next time. Is there a possibility to introduce plants that can grow from the top down on the walls so that you can still get some of that same effect that you had previously had, since you don't have room at the ground level?
I think that's a good idea.
Okay. And I think that is my only question. Only questions.
Okay, I've got a couple. So on that, I guess it's the northwest corner. You've got, originally that terracotta tile was wrapping the corner. Now it just stops at that corner and transitions to plaster. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And what is, I mean, conceptually, how do you, are you running that terracotta long and then butting the plaster into that? Like, what is the idea? How are you going to transition at that point?
We've sort of held on that just until we can get some direction from the board on where we should go. If we need some additional kind of visuals of heading down Hope Street with
I mean,
what's
it's-
exposed. We'd happy
It's
to-
really just a question of have you thought that through, or is it strictly like we're, for cost savings, we're transitioning here?
We're looking for places to reduce cost where it's not visible from street.
Okay. And then and I don't know if it's truly your intent or not, but in the perspective views in your renderings, the window detailing is different. Meaning it looked like there's, in the approved, there's sort of this recessed, like you step the window back to a secondary face, and now it's much more of flush condition. So is that the intent?
That was a result of part of the VE, yeah.
Can you make the picture show so we can
Yeah,
see both
sure.
of them again?
Because that's,
So there was this slight shadow line being shown here.
but that was consistent throughout all of the plaster
Correct.
openings, correct? Okay, so that's not,
The public-facing ones, yeah.
yeah. So there's just a lot of changes that are not listed in your project description. So I think next time, we need to be really clear about what all of the changes is, like, for instance, the flashing detail, all of those things. They all matter, as
100%,
you're aware.
yeah.
So, okay. Like, for instance, the railing looks different, and, so all of those things. Okay, any follow-up questions before we jump into comments? Mr. Olson, do you want to start?
I think this project's ready to move on with minor changes that might come from other members here, but in general, I suspect it's ready.
Okay, so conceptually, it seems
Yes, it
like it's
does.
going in the right direction. The
Yes.
changes in general are acceptable.
Yes.
Mr. Noon?
Yeah, I would support that too, with these comments. I don't see any of the proposed changes, if you will, that have really deviated from what was approved. I don't think it's exacerbated any perceived problems that there may be. I would, as Chair Moore mentioned, I would like to see, where those changes were made. I think I wouldn't be in support of maybe all of the material changes. I think some of that material should be kept. But I would like to see, as he stated, I would like to see a side-by-side comparison of everything that has changed,
Sure.
so we can
Yeah.
address that. Thank you.
Mr. Black?
Yeah, I'd agree with those comments and then add, obviously, we want to see the landscape up-to-date plan, so.
Sure.
That's all. Thanks.
Vice Chair Six?
Chair Moore, I think that the additions, the infills, are not significant massing to the street, so I think they're acceptable. I would like to see some kind of planters or something along that exit, along the south or downsheet exit. I think simply to rely on FedEx's planting there is not fair. I think that, turning the corner, I would not eliminate all of the terracotta on that north side. It should at least turn the corner at some point and to make the building more whole. I would change the CMU on the south side to plaster on that ground floor. And then, as Chair Moore and others have suggested, there's a slight creep to a more contemporary. I'd like to dial it back a little bit to more of the quieter, no black flashing of the parapets, and the careful attention to dialing down the black trim and so forth, or maybe even the windows, and just dial it back just a little bit, so it gets back to, granted, we have limited extent of comments here, but it's gone a little further than I would like to see, and it should be dialed back. And just a very minor thing, the necessary one-hour firewall on the south. Can we go there? Especially in the rendering. I think in the rendering, that's just one flat wall. I think it would behoove you to return that wall as you go up the stairs, so it's got some dimensionality to it. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Those would be my comments.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Anderson?
I generally agree with everyone that spoke. I think the elevation facing the neighbors on the north, maybe consider, since you're looking at doing all plaster, consider different, well, I was gonna say different shades of like colors or like grays or something, but I don't really see where you would break that. But I do agree with returning the siding on that form, and
Sorry.
yeah, I don't think the massing additions really affect the view from the street, so. Yeah, and I would consider the planting from the top down on that exit wall, so that's it.
Okay, we keep losing our picture here.
I don't know why it does that.
Yeah,
Just let maybe.
there it goes. Okay, so I'll make a motion for a continuance back to the full board with the following comments, that the proposed changes to the unit count, massing, cafe area, small square foot additions appear to be acceptable as proposed. The applicant shall study how to bring the previously approved detailing back into this project. Shall study wrapping the northwest corner of the project with the terracotta tile. Shall study finding additional landscape opportunities along the south property line. And that's it for now.
Chair Moore, I'll second that. Under discussion, do you feel like the exposed CMU on the south side is appropriate? It's a new element, and I think should be, is appropriate for us to comment on.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So let's add, it's on the south facade? is
Down
that right?
sheet, yeah, so
South facade.
first story.
Provide plaster over the proposed CMU block on the south elevation. and coordinate the 3D renderings with the project elevations. Anything else to add?
Nope. Seconder is satisfied.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, let's take a vote.
All right, I'll start with Chair Moore,
Yes.
Vice Chair Six,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Block,
Yes.
Board Member Noon,
Yes.
and Board Member Olson.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, we're on to item number 4. We could have. It's a little janky there.
Hello. Doing well. How about yourself? I do have your presentation that you all had submitted. We can't use that. We can't. Okay. I wouldn't mind trying it in the future, but it's a little late. It's a little late.
It's okay.
I don't know if this connection, just bear with me.
That's okay.
We're all these things. There's also this. Is that the one we need to pull up?
Okay, item number 4, 3707 State Street. The Chick-fil-A restaurant proposes to convert the existing one-lane drive-through to a new two-lane drive-through for the existing service window. The project includes a new canopy over the drive-through lanes behind the building, new ordering stations / menu boards with small canopies, widening the entrance driveway to 3 lanes for improved site access, reconfiguring the existing parking lot and removal of 15 parking spaces, new bike racks, a new stormwater treatment system, and other site improvements. Landscaping requires consideration by the ABR of an alternative landscape design pursuant to municipal code. No final appealable decision will be made at this hearing. Project will require compliance with project compatibility findings, urban design guidelines, and the Upper State Street Area Design Guidelines. We last saw this May 2nd. Welcome back. Yeah, there you go. If we could have our motion up, there we go. Just read through. So the board finds the project is designed as deficient in landscaping. We'd like to see some additional landscaping, particularly between spaces 21 and through 30. Consider adding a finger planter. Continue to study providing any additional landscaping areas. In general, the board is not supportive of the canopy in terms of size, material, and color. And this would apply to the structure holding the menu boards as well. Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Just want to let you know that I fully reviewed the record and will be able to comment.
Excellent. Okay. If you could introduce yourselves. It's been doing, that's,
I haven't touched anything. I kid you not.
that's a new one.
I didn't do anything.
I believe you.
Oh, there we
Okay.
go.
Maybe I'll just kind of pretend. Okay.
I think that when we presenter view, there we go.
Okay.
Wait, is that okay for you? I don't want to mess with that.
Yeah. As long as I can. Yeah, I
Yeah.
can do that.
Yeah. Introduce yourselves and take us through
Yeah.
your changes.
Well, good evening, Chair Moore, members of the commission. My name is Jennifer Daw, and I am the West Region Senior Real Estate Representative for Chick-fil-A. My team of consultants, architects, engineers, and landscape architects are all here this evening to address any technical questions. After the design review meeting on May 2nd, we seriously listened to your feedback as we modified our plans. We believe our plans presented to you today addresses your comments. So just to familiarize yourself with the site, this is the aerial view which shows the existing restaurant conditions. You will see the existing landscaping, the driveway entrance and exit, as well as the existing parking. Our proposed plan modifies these existing conditions. These photos also show you the existing conditions of landscaping and parking all at the site. On May 2nd, we presented our plans which showed the metal canopy on the southeast elevation and also the dark bronze menu board canopy. Your board commented that, in general, the board is not supportive of the canopy in terms of size, material, and color. This would also apply to the structure holding of the menu boards as well. We listened to your comments, and we decided to remove the metal canopy in the rear. This shows where the location of that originally proposed canopy has been removed from the project. As for the menu board structure, there was concerns about the proposed color, the dark bronze, and we listened and changed that menu board structure from the dark bronze to the dapper tan to match the existing building color. You will see that the menu board blends with the existing architecture of the building and makes the menu board structure less visible from State Street. This slide shows an up-close depiction of the new menu board structure, which will be painted to match the building. Landscaping. On May 2nd, we also presented our proposed landscaping plans where the board provided the following comment. The board finds that the project designed is deficient in landscaping. The board would like to see additional landscaping, in particular between spaces 21 through 30, and consider adding a finger planter. In general, continue to study providing additional landscaping areas, including trees where feasible. We listened to your comments, and I would like to present the modifications made to the landscaping plans. So for the first comment, where the board would like to see additional landscaping, in particular between spaces 21 and 30, and considered adding a landscape planter, our response is we added a new landscape planter located between spaces 21 and 30. We are also adding 3 large box trees ranging from 24 inches to 48 inches in size. Code requirement is 2/3 of trees must be 15-gallon size. You also asked us to continue to study providing additional landscaping plans, including trees where feasible. Our response, we added 3 planter areas which were all enlarged. One was added at the entrance of the patio area, or at the entrance of the site next to the adjacent to the patio area. This was a direct response from the last meeting. In addition, we enlarged planter areas in the rear, the south of the property, to accommodate trees and planting. 3 existing trees will now be relocated instead of removed. One of those trees will be relocated to the new landscape planter between spaces 21 and 30. Another tree will be relocated to the southeast planter adjacent to the creek in the enlarged planter area. And the final tree will be relocated to the planter at the end of the drive-through exit. With these modifications, we are no longer asking for an alternative landscape design per the municipal code. Our project now has 9 proposed trees, and therefore we have actually increased our landscape area by over 400 square feet. In addition, those 3 existing street trees and the existing natural landscape creek will remain undisturbed. Therefore, I would like to summarize the modifications presented this evening. So if you recall, the proposed plan on May 2nd, which showed the dark metal canopy, this has been modified and removed. The metal canopy has been removed, and the menu board has been painted to match with the dapper tan. The proposed plan with the order canopy and the menu structures, this shows this. As I stated, we revised that to have the menu board painted in dapper tan and removed of the canopy. The previous plan presented on May 2nd shows the metal canopy on the east elevation, and this now shows it where the canopy has been removed. As previously stated, we added a landscape planter between spaces 21 and 30. We've enlarged the planter areas to accommodate the additional landscaping and trees on the site, and increased our landscape requirement by 400 square feet. In conclusion, I want to reiterate that my team and I listened to your comments presented to us on the last meeting on May 2nd, and feel that the revised plans presented to you today address your comments regarding the landscaping and the canopies. Therefore, we can hope that we can receive positive comments about the revised plans before our City Council hearing next Tuesday, June 7th. This concludes my presentation, and my team and I are here to answer any questions.
Okay, great. With that, we need to open public comment. Do we have anybody?
Yes, thank you, Chair Moore and board members. So I'll start with virtual public comment. So if any member joining by Zoom would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand to indicate that you would like to speak, and I will call on you. So I did see that Miss Anna Marie Gott did have her hand raised. If you'd like to speak on this item, please raise your hand one more time. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and send you an unmute request, Ms. Scott, and you will have 2 minutes to speak.
Before my comments, could I do this by phone? My internet connection is unstable.
It seems to be working just fine now, so if for some reason it causes like an interruption, we can open up public comment again, but I would just
Okay.
proceed.
Okay, thank you. The city charter and the municipal code give the ABR great authority to review all elements of a project. The agenda recognizes this obligation when it states project will require compliance with the project compatibility findings, urban design guidelines, and the Upper State Street area design guidelines. The charter requires that the ABR protect and enhance the natural charm and beauty of the area in which a project is located. This includes the historical style, quality, and characteristics of the building structures and architectural features associated with and established by Santa Barbara's long, illustrious, and distinguished past. The City Council changed the compatibility findings recently. It removed from item 1 any requirement that the project comply with the municipal code. This was decried by many residents and ABR members. Luckily, a former city attorney reread Section B of the project compatibility findings, which state, in addition to any other consideration and requirements specified in this code, the following findings shall be considered by the ABR. Did you get that? Specified in this code. This is the municipal code. This is chapter 30. If this project can't comply with the municipal code and the charter, the project cannot be approved. This project cannot comply with chapter 30.185.160 drive-through facility, which states new or expanded drive-through facilities are prohibited. Can any of you say with a straight face that this is not an expanded drive-through facility? Say no to this project, use the power that you thought you lost, find that this project cannot be approved because it does not comply with the municipal code or the charter. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else out there?
Thank you, Chair Moore and board members. So at this time, I don't see any more hands raised for this project. So I'll move to in-person public comment, but I haven't received any speaker slips and I don't see anyone in attendance. And we did receive written correspondence from Miss Rhonda Hobbs. So with that, I'll turn it over back to you, Chair Moore.
Okay, thank you. It's time for questions. Do we have anything for staff before we jump in? Any clarification? No? Okay. Ms. Anderson, you want to start?
If possible, can we look at the site plan? I was just curious if you could just show us the location of the new bike racks and if you have an idea of what you're proposing for that.
Give me like a second. I can
Okay.
pull that up.
Oh,
some
okay.
extra stuff, but feel free to, that should be the most updated.
Okay. Let's see if it's on here. So bike racks, 2 proposed, or I mean, that's current, I'm sorry, the existing proposed to 29 spaces, plus bike racks for 8, 6 short-term and 2 long-term.
Awesome. Can you show us on the site plan where that's at?
It's right here. Oh, and let me go over here. Right here. Oops, went too far. Right there.
Great, thank you. Those are my questions.
Okay, Vice Chair Six,
I have no questions.
Mr. Black?
Just for my own edification, so in the project description, as part of the agenda, it talks about your proposal including converting a 1-lane drive-through to a 2-lane, is that correct? Or is it, so how many lanes are there? Because when I look up there, I see 1, 2, 3 plus a through lane plus parking. So how many lanes are there?
So I can show you what's there existing, and then I can show you the proposed. So let me go back here. I don't want to have to, let's see if I can just increase it this way. So this is existing, right? So you have
Yes.
you have basically 2 lanes in. This is really for the drive-through itself. Here's the pickup window to the entrance. This is more of the thorough lane for people to park. And so what's proposed is we are widening this entrance to about 40 feet. There were handicap stalls over here. We're relocating those stalls to over in this area and basically pushing the drive-through lane over. So now you'll have 2 lanes from pickup window to here. And this 3rd lane is more of like a hold area in essence. So to kind of bring, based on our traffic analysis that we've had done from our traffic consultant, these 5 cars could come off of State Street if it ever got to be more than the 22 cars in the stack, or 19 cars, I'm sorry, in the stack. So we're bringing these 5 cars in as a holding pattern or a holding cell in a way. And then you'll have this thorough lane for people to go ahead and come around and park and dine in. And then at the exit, one of the things that we've seen recently and has been a problem is that people like to turn left, and that also bogs down the drive-through. So we're designing this to turn right, forcing people to turn right only, and we'll force people out onto State Street to really help expedite and increase the speed of service and get customers off the site.
Okay, thank you. And then just one other question. So I heard in your description of the landscape changes, you talked about relocating what, 2 trees, 3 trees, was it?
It's 3 trees.
3. And are you talking about transplanting, or are we talking about, when you said relocate?
I will let our landscape architect kind of
That says to me that you're digging them up and planting them somewhere else?
We are. We're going to dig them up, box them.
And what species of trees are those?
So there's a sycamore and I think 2 oaks. So I figured because they're pretty well established, we should probably save them because they're gorgeous as is. So we can relocate them. We do them often on a lot of our sites just to save what we can.
Just out of interest, what box sizes might be required to transplant trees? I haven't looked and seen how large those trees are, but
Well, we'd have to go and measure the diameter of the trunk currently. And then from there, we usually, figure out the type of box size that each tree will be. I mean, offhand right now, I can't tell you for each tree because I'd have to go measure them, but they're usually pretty large, and they brown bag them and then they put them in large boxes.
so you're pretty comfortable with your anticipated success rate on these?
Very, yeah. We actually do it a lot. We usually get arborist reports and have to do that on plenty of sites, so it's something that we do quite often.
Okay. And then just to confirm as well, you suggested that you're increasing the amount of landscape area by some 400 plus square feet, is that correct?
From the last site plan, yes.
From the last one? Okay.
So if you see, I want to say Plan South to the left, we now have 2 trees over there in the corner. That
Yeah.
planter was enlarged. And then also over by the trash enclosure, we added a tree. That planter was enlarged. And then we added that one more finger, which also was not there prior.
And since you've got that,
Oh, sorry, let me go back to it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, just for my own edification again. So could you point out where the transplanted oak tree is going to be, or 2 of them, and then where the sycamore is going to be,
So,
and where they're coming from?
right here
Yes?
is a sycamore. And that buddy is going to go over here. And then these 2 are oaks. And we're moving one here and moving one here. And then this one's going to be a strawberry tree. I added another oak here and another oak here. So we have some symmetry. They all kind of look alike.
Okay, those are my only questions. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Noon?
I don't have any questions.
Mr. Olson?
No questions.
Okay. My only question is there's a detail for a site wall on one of the sheets. Where is that happening?
Yeah. This wall right here. And I can pull up on the presentation where we kind of added that planter.
Okay, so it's not, I guess, the planter, but so the wall, there's not a wall there now, and you're adding that as something behind the planter?
That's correct. Carlos, do you want to?
No, I'm not following your question. No, there's no wall over there.
Okay.
We're just there is, right now, there is this wall.
Uh-huh.
It's somewhere over here. So we're just relocating that wall. We're demoing part of this wall.
Okay.
Just making it, to look like Lake Dick 60.
Okay, so there's not a wall enclosing that patio now?
Yes, no, there is.
Move closer to the mic, please, when you're talking.
There is.
Okay. So, I guess
So
I'm not,
I understand what he's saying.
I'm not really
This is
understanding.
this is a wall, and let me pull up, let me
Let's-
go to the pictures. Hold on one second.
yeah, that would be helpful.
We're moving that over to make room for the handicap.
Yeah, feel free to grab a chair.
Thank you.
So that's the front. This is the front. Okay, so see right about here where my cursor is, it's kind of hard to tell.
Yes.
But that's the wall. And this side of this parcel, of the building, this is where the ADA stalls are going to be relocated.
Okay, so when you say the wall, is that the wall that's being demoed?
This is going to be demolished.
Okay, great.
This wall will be demolished.
We'll just match that.
And then, but we're adding it on the other side, correct?
No.
No, okay.
Okay, now I'm very confused. So there isn't a new site wall?
Thank you.
We're just moving it over.
Yes.
So you've demolished one wall and you're building a new wall? Yes.
To match.
Okay. All right. Okay, any other questions? Okay, let's go to comments then. Who would like to start?
I can start.
Okay.
My comments are mostly about your presentation. It's excellent.
Could we actually, speaking of the, let's have something up on the screen,
Sure, what would you like?
either one of the renderings or something like that.
Okay, give me a second here. Site plan, rendering. Site plan, okay. There you go.
Great.
Okay.
Good. So, again, my comment is about your presentation. And the reason I didn't have questions is I thought you answered our points very well and illustrated them on the screens for us. So it was quite good to follow. And so my comment is to compliment you on the presentation.
Okay, Mr. Noon?
I would concur with that statement. Thank you for addressing them directly and presenting it so clearly. Thank you.
And Mr. Black?
Yeah, I would agree. That was definitely a plus to remove that overhead structure. So That's really contributed to the success of this. I guess the whole business of compliance with city charter and municipal codes is not our purview, so I can't say anything about that, but that's, I guess, assume that's something that council will have to take up if in fact it's presented to them and they have questions, but other than that, those are my comments. Thanks.
Okay, Vice Chair Six?
Yes, ours being an aesthetic board, I think the aesthetics are very well handled and was successful.
Okay, Ms. Anderson?
No comments.
Yeah, I don't have anything additional to add other than thank you for adding the landscaping and going to that level is, I think, a benefit for everybody. So would somebody like to make a motion? And again, so it's not we cannot give it project design approval, but we can continue it to.
Just continue it indefinitely, or would it be continuance to, I'll let Allison speak to that.
Excuse me, Chair Moore, yes, it could be continued indefinitely. I think it would be very helpful, though, if you feel the project that PDA could have been granted, were it ready, make those comments. That will help speed it along at the next hearing.
Okay, somebody comfortable doing that?
I can do that, Chair Moore. So I will make a motion to continue this indefinitely, that the board finds that it is ready for PDA. The board appreciates the applicant's attention to the comments and answering, complying to the comments that were made in the addition of the landscaping, the reduction or removing the canopy, and I guess it would be the color of the order boards.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? No? Do we need to read it back? Let's read it back once.
All right, so the motion was to continue the project indefinitely with the following comments. Number one, the board finds that the project is ready for project design approval. Number two, the board appreciates the applicant's attention to the previous comments and complying to previous comments made at the last meeting. And number three, the addition of landscaping and removing the canopy is appreciated, as well as the color of the menu boards.
Okay, is that how you want it?
Yes, that'll work.
Okay, all right, let's vote.
All right, so I'll start with Chair Moore,
Yes.
Vice Chair Six,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Black,
Yes.
Board Member Noon,
Yes.
and Board Member Olson.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Okay, thank you very much. And with that, we can adjourn our meeting. Thank you very much, everybody.